Adams family. Their house is a museum where people come to see them. They really are a scream, the Adams family.
Greetings from Castle Goring, from Nikki and from me. Well, this afternoon I have some rather odious terrain to cover, or some rather lightly tiresome terrain, and a bit of a tribute to a wonderful man who died this week, who wrote a best-selling book called A Lion Called Christian. So, if I may, without further ado, I will plunge right in. Countess something less says, getting ready for another hour of your most enjoyable wit and insights. Thank you very much. Lady C, what do you think of the reports that Spotify and Netflix are hiring people to produce content on Meghan and Harry's behalf? Since these two are doing nothing, I doubt they can save that vessel from sinking in the ratings charts. Why don't they fire the duo? Are they afraid of their flying monkeys and race cards? Well, I'm going to answer this briefly, and then there's another question that will make one elucidate rather more thoroughly upon the subject. Spotify and Netflix are hiring people to produce content for Meghan and Harry because Meghan and Harry have proven to be completely inadequate. Totally inadequate. They have produced one Spotify program and novelty always has appeal, and their profile was rather higher than it is at the moment in terms of desirability, though their profile is still very much to the forefront in terms of constant newspaper and media coverage. But in terms of being desirable, it's plummeted since the airing of that one show with Corden and Elton John, which I never saw it very much, but I saw little snippets of it. But I gather it was really not the greatest of entertainment. But at least it was something, since when there's been nothing. Spotify and Netflix sign up people who they hope are going to make their money. They pay small advances in the hope that the content will be produced and everybody will make money. So they stand to lose something. But what they stand to lose if they let Harry and Meghan go is hope. They had hope, they had expectation. So far, they've been delivered what we've been delivered, an awful lot of hot air, empty promises and hot air. Are they afraid of the flying monkeys and the race card? I would doubt it. I would doubt it very much. I mean, Meghan looks whiter than half the Caucasian population in Europe. So how she can have ever thought that anybody was going to buy the explanation that she was a victim of racism when she'd gone to such lengths to expunge all of her African heritage is quite beyond anybody with reason. But I think that card has been overplayed, and I don't think that anybody really cares about it anymore. So I don't think that's something that Spotify or Netflix need to worry about. But, they thought they were getting two members of the royal family, and they thought they were getting a very prestigious signing. Helen Campbell says, Lady C, as you know, Spotify hasn't paid Harry and Meghan the bulk of the 90 million contract and won't until their podcasts begin on a regular basis. That's correct. Everything else is pie in the sky and nonsense. I'm sure that Harry and Meghan can use the money. So what do you think is their reason for dragging out the production of their podcasts for so long? Dragging out what production? They delivered one podcast, no production. They delivered nothing. So you can't drag out nothing. I know that Spotify has now taken it into their own hands to get these podcasts off the ground, but I can't figure out how it has gotten to this state. Why have those two just been sitting on their hands for the last year? Well, Helen Campbell, I wouldn't have said they were sitting on their hands. I would have said they were sitting on their mouths. That's what they have been sitting on, their mouths. The orifice upon which I am sitting is their mouth, because what emanates from it is what emanates from the orifice upon which I am sitting. And I am afraid that neither Spotify nor Netflix can convert feces into ratings. And this has been a grave difficulty because Harry and Meghan talk big and perform either small or not at all. And when they do perform, it's so glaringly and, in fact, painfully inadequate. But she knows how to talk the talk, and he's not bad either, let me tell you. He's pretty glib too, especially when you have people listening who are enchanted and enthralled because they've got a royalty. There's also something else to consider. Meghan used to be competent. Meghan was very successful, according to all reports, when she did the TIG. Now, I have been informed that maybe many of her alleged followers were actually bought, and therefore the figures were never all that they were touted as a being, and maybe it wasn't quite the success that it was presented as being. But whether that is so or not, even at its lowest point in terms of viewers and followers and whatever you call them, in terms of her TIG, it was successful. It was successful. So she's competent. The problem with Meghan is a problem that I have seen, not only with Meghan, but I saw it with Diana, and I've seen it with other people who they have, and to a large extent, we're going to keep Diana out of this because she was really young when she married Charles, but she had this perspicacity to close the deal. And then her personality imploded and she endured years, as did everybody else involved with her, years of tumult and hardship. A version of this has happened with Meghan, except Meghan doesn't have the excuse of having been 20 years old. Meghan was batting 40. Meghan was extremely experienced in all quarters and walks of life. Meghan doesn't have youth as the excuse. But what happened with Meghan is a parallel situation. One personality closes the deal and another wakes up with the wedding ring on her finger. All Meghan's conduct leading up to becoming the Duchess of Sussex was geared towards making herself into a likable success. She pretended to be cooperative. One of her mantras was, "I choose happiness." Well, where did that go when she became a duchess? Because once she became a duchess, she chose misery, she chose turmoil, she chose anguish, she chose conflict. But up until then, she chose apparent cooperation, happiness, positivity, at least enough to function. I gather that from Canadians who knew her and at the time that she was in Canada, that she was never as popular with the crew as it has been presented as being, that she was, and the person who told me said that she was well known to be a witch, except the witch word began with a B. Nevertheless, she never crossed over that line. She was not uncooperative with the producers, and with anybody she had to suck up with, treacle poured out of her mouth and every other pore and orifice. Treacle. She saved the vinegar for those who she regarded as beneath her, evidently. But the point is, she knew how to perform so that she would remain a success. She did it with a TIG, she did it with Suits. She stopped doing it. So in a way, she has either liberated her true personality or she has undergone an implosion due to the adjustment that she needed to make from being a mere ensemble player in a cable television series to the Duchess of Sussex and one of the most famous women on earth initially, and one of the most beloved women on earth initially, and now one of the most infamous and reviled human beings on earth. Queen of Kingsbury and a journalist say there are two questions that I have consolidated into one. Lady C, a question about M. Dollarbill H. Do you think there's a conflict of interest? Big block capitals. They need contact, I think they might actually mean content, for Netflix, Spotify and a book deal. Wouldn't each of them like to be the first and have exclusive content? Yes. That's a very good point to make. I don't quite know how this is going to work, because normally, if you sign up with one company, another won't touch you, and each wants to be first. They have signed up with two dire competitors and also have a book deal, each of which requires its own fresh content. It's quite clear they don't have enough genuine content, and never did, because if they'd had enough genuine content, they wouldn't have gone on Oprah and told a whole tissue of lies. Harry wouldn't have gone into genetic pain. I'm just one of the most privileged human beings on earth, and genetic pain. My pain is greater than that of people who are less privileged than I am. I mean, really, their content so far has been scraping the bottom of the barrel, or maybe actually swimming in one of the 16, the bowls of one of the 16 thrones that they reign upon, and maybe also contribute content to. Janice McCarville says, Harry and Meghan can drum up all the attention they want. Relevance and credibility are two things they will never get back. And there, in a nutshell, we have it. That's why Netflix and Spotify have stepped in to try to salvage what is obviously bad signings. They know that they've made a mistake. They're trying to salvage something out of the vacuum that they have been landed with, because they thought they were getting wonderful people that everybody was going to love and that had a really good story to tell. No, they've got none of that, none of it. They've got a whining prince and a whining, entitled, spoilt brat, duchess, whining. Oh, why don't we have perfect lives? I mean, those poor people in South Africa who have to fight for food on a daily basis are so much luckier than we are, because we're not number one. No, we're not number one. The world has to feel sorry for us. Christos Liakis says, Harry should pray that nothing happens to the Queen while he's on this vile little crusade of his. He and his camp love, spelt like that, to use his mother's death for his advancement. But let's see, how will he, if he can at all, get rid of the stain of demonstrably contributing to his grandmother's death, if it were to transpire, God forbid. Christos Liakis, wonderful observation. Harry thinks that he has got away with the way he behaved in the run-up to his grandfather's death, because he has, in his mind, not suffered any adverse consequences that he deserved. And of course, he deserves no adverse consequences. He's not to blame for having damaged the last months of his grandfather's life. He's not to blame for having damaged the last months of his grandfather's wife's life, his grandfather's children's lives, his grandfather's grandchildren's lives, as each of them was preparing to say goodbye to a loved one. And each of them realized that Harry and Meghan were figuratively putting the boot in while the man was literally on his deathbed and in the run-up to literally being on his deathbed. Harry thinks he's got away with it. Meghan thinks she's got away with it. They don't realize that most people in this world understand that you don't kick someone when they're down. When someone's dying, you don't get on television and tell a load of self-serving lies. You just don't. But they think they've got away with it. Let's see what happens, God forbid, as you say, if his behavior continues along the lines that it has been going so far, and it turns out to be a contributory factor to the Queen's demise, because the Queen is one of the most beloved human beings on earth, and not because she was born a princess, and not because she married a prince, shades of Meghan and Harry, but because she has earned the regard of people all over the world. Really Nostalgic says, hello Lady C, what are your thoughts on rapper Cardi B successfully suing a YouTuber? The YouTuber blatantly lied and admitted to lying in court for clicks and views. The case went on for 3 years! They are now comparing Cardi to Meghan and declaring it a victory for Meghan too. Cardi even tweeted that she needs to talk to Meghan. Boozy, or whatever his name is all over this. Really Nostalgic, you're speaking about a category of person that I have to tell you I know little or nothing about. I don't know who Cardi B is. I don't wish to know who Cardi B is. She's a rapper. Good luck to her. Couldn't care less. The YouTuber, that I think is something else again. Meghan and Cardi B, if they are birds of a feather, let them flock together. Rapper and rapping artist, because Meghan is a rapping artist. However, if Cardi B was defamed unfairly and knowingly by anybody, that person deserves to be penalized. Let's make no mistake about it. The law is there to protect the innocent. If this person, I don't know whether it's a man or woman because you haven't indicated, lied and admitted to lying in court for clicks and views and defamed this rapper, or even a rapper, even somebody I know nothing about, even somebody I don't like, even somebody I deplore, is entitled to not be defamed, to have their reputation treated with the decorum and the respect that each person deserves to have his or her reputation treated with. Good for Cardi B. I'm glad she took the person to court, and I'm glad she prevailed. I'm sorry for her that it took so long, but lawsuits often take that length of time, and sometimes even longer. As for Cardi B then moseying up to Meghan, I mean, she really must be very ignorant if she's done that. And if she's declaring it a victory for Meghan too. Cardi B, you are defamed. Meghan's done the defaming. I don't know how you can be trying to join the camp of having just won an action for defamation, that you're now deciding that you're going to join the other camp. That doesn't make sense to me. But since I don't know who you are or what you look like, nor quite frankly do I have any interest in finding out, I'm afraid rappers are not my style or taste. But I can imagine that you most likely are from similar circumstances and you've made your way in the world, and so you think that because you've been defamed and unfairly, that Meghan's been defamed unfairly. She hasn't. she's had the bright light of truth shone upon her. You had the bright light of lies shone upon you. Big difference. I would recommend that you get your facts straight before you show solidarity for those who actually you have just defeated in a court of law. In other words, people who defame others unfairly. Shelley's Cloud says, Dear Lady C, have you seen the gossip on the site Crazy Days and Nights, implying that H has interviewed Mohamed Al Fayed and is going along with the theory that his mother was murdered? Can you imagine if that's true? Well, Shelley's Cloud, as I've made clear before on previous occasions, and I will reiterate, I do not look at most television, so I don't know what the site Crazy Days and Nights is, and nor do I intend to find out. But that doesn't stop me answering your question, which is a perfectly valid one. I know as a fact, and I'm not going to tell you how I know, but take it from me, I know from personal knowledge that Mohamed Al Fayed is a very old man who has retired from life virtually entirely. There is no possibility, none whatsoever, of Harry going to see him, interviewing him, and sharing thoughts on whether his mother was murdered or not. And if this is the sort of story that Harry and his people are putting out, he should be ashamed of himself, although I suspect if you have no shame, you might find it difficult to summon up some. Hello Reader says, Lady C, there's been a huge obituary in the Times and an article in the Mail about John Rendall, the conservationist who bought a lion called Christian from Harrods. Wrote a best-selling book about it and died earlier this week. By any chance did your paths cross? He looks as if he was a very interesting man. Well, funny you should ask. He was an old and dear friend. I first met John Rendall the night he met his first wife, Liz Brewer. I've known Liz since June 1973. And I don't remember now when I met John, but it was in the 70s. Because John and Liz started going out together. And at the time, John's best friend, and they remained great friends all his life, was Roddy Llewellyn, who was having a romance with Princess Margaret. And of course, there were occasions when Roddy needed a date, and Princess Margaret clearly couldn't be going out on the town with Roddy. So I would be Roddy's date, in quotes. We were only ever just friends. And I was slightly friendly with Roddy and very friendly with John, and remained so the whole of his life. Because John and I were due to be having lunch at the Chelsea Arts Club, which he often had lunch at. He either had lunch at the Mona Lisa or the Chelsea Arts Club. And I was often there for lunch or dinner with John. And as I said, I met him in whatever year it was, 70-something. I arrived at a party and I don't remember whose party it was or even where it was, but it would have been somewhere in Chelsea. And he was there, and he was very good looking. And when I walked in, we started to talk. And we talked for a little while. And then Liz, who I knew, came and joined us, and we were chattering away. And I would imagine, looking back on it, I don't really remember, that Liz must have sent him off to get drinks for us because she needed an opportunity to speak to me. And the gist of it was, Georgie, do you mind awfully? I really like him. Because she was worried that he might have, having been chatting her up, he was going to chat me up as well. And I remember exactly what I said. I said, Liz, have no fear, friendship always outlasts romance. She must have sent him off for a drink because he came back, we had a little drink together, and I sailed off into the room, and he and Liz got together, and then he proposed. Problem is, and I'm not telling tales out of school, I don't think, because Liz is writing her memoirs, and they are going to turn out to be really some memoirs. And to those of you who don't know who I'm speaking about, Liz Brewer has been the society, in quotes, PR for the last nearly 50 years. Oh, Mickey's coming to join us. So before I leave the subject of Dear John, I'll tell you a little, really, which I hope will amuse you, anecdote. Well, actually, more than one anecdote. The first one is John. Before John met Liz, his girlfriend was someone called Sarah Ponsonby. I knew Sarah from Jamaica, and I'm going to tell you the Jamaican part of the story before I tell you the English part of the story. Sarah was a relation of the Earl of Bessborough, and she was an absolutely great girl. She came to a dinner party at my parents' house, and she was seated beside Brigadier General Rudolph Green, who was the Chief of Staff of the Jamaican Army. And she said, well, I'll tell you what he said because I didn't hear what she said. He told me. After dinner, Rudolph signaled to me to come over to him, so I went over. So he said, Georgie, you need to tell your friend that it's very tactless to say to the man who is delegated in stamping out the ganja trade in the country, oh, would you like after dinner to go up to the pool and have a tot? I have the greatest grass that I got in Moby. I said, she didn't. He said, she did. I said, oh, Rudolph. I said, you're not going to tell Daddy and Mummy, are you? He said, of course not. And it didn't even occur to me to say, of course, you're not going to report her to the police either, which, thank God, it didn't occur to him to do either. That was Sarah Ponsonby. Fast forward, in 1975, she bought a house that she renamed Rendall Farm. And it was a commune. It was a huge thing in the 70s because it was known in the press as an aristocratic commune. Remember, this was the 70s when peace and love and all of that were big factors in everyday life. And Sarah bought Rendall Farm and had a whole load of friends there, one of whom was John, and another of whom was his best friend, Roddy Llewellyn. Now, to slightly confuse the chronology, when John and Liz were going out, before they got married, there were times when Roddy needed a date. And of course, he couldn't have Princess Margaret as his date because, I mean, Princess Margaret just couldn't have gone out with Roddy. It would have brought the world crashing down. So I used to be Roddy's date. But this is a little bit after Rendall Farm, because Roddy was the gardener at Rendall Farm. Princess Margaret used to go and stay at Rendall Farm. And once she was describing to the Queen about how wonderful it was, and nobody has any money, but everybody gets along famously. And the Queen said, "Oh, well, what can I do to help?" The Queen sent 24 brace of pheasant. Oh gosh, I mean, those innocent days. Well, unfortunately, Rendall Farm came to a crashing halt when the police discovered 292 cannabis plants growing there. Now, Sarah was definitely into her weed, as she used to call it. I was never into weed, I have to tell you. I never liked anything. I used to say I need to be in complete command of my faculties. Whether I need them or not, I need to know that I can reach for them and have access to them when I want to. So I was never about clouding my judgment with anything. But it has to be said, as Bill Clinton can tell you, I was the exception and not the rule. In our generation. Anyway. Sorry for laughing. The whole thing is such a far more innocent age. But Sarah was definitely into her weed. Not everybody was. I mean, several people weren't. I mean, Princess Margaret, for instance, wasn't into weed. She was into her whiskey. And Helen Mirren was often there. Helen Mirren used to, if I remember correctly, she was often there with Prince George Galitzin. Helen Mirren, who would like you to believe is a solid working class girl who has worked her way up. The Mironovs were aristocrats. And Helen Mirren was a part of that whole scene. So it was very interesting and very glamorous, but nobody had any money. Absolutely no money whatsoever. I mean, how we all lived is quite beyond me looking back on it, because we squeaked by on a wing and a prayer. All of us. It was just amazing. And we didn't need money, and we didn't care about money. You know, we cared about more important things, peace and love, and being nice to other people and all the rest of it. But after the police raided Rendall Farm, that was the end of it. So I just thought this might entertain you. Now we go on to something a little bit less agreeable, in terms of, not that John died, but in terms that he was such a lovely man. Ellen Lyons says, Lady C, if you look at said picture of Andrew and Roberts, she says it was taken after being a tramp and before the said assault took place. Is it my imagination, or does he look pristine and not sweaty and dishevelled after a night dancing and sweating all over the place? Ellen Lyons, very observant of you. Last week, Alan Starkey waded in to point out that he has known Prince Andrew very well for years. and Sarah York very well for years, because Alan Starkey was involved with Johnny Bryan, who was Sarah's financial advisor, if you remember. The great advice he gave her and her toes. But he's known Prince Andrew very well for a very long time, and he says he has always been astonished at how Prince Andrew would spend the whole night dancing, or everybody would be in a really hot room, and Prince Andrew was the only person who didn't even glow. So, that aside, the picture shows very clearly that Prince Andrew has no sweat marks, his hair isn't clammy. If it's at the end of a night that he was sweating as profusely as she says he was, the photograph refutes her claims absolutely. So thank you very much for spotting that one, Ellen Lyons. Shelley Malcolm Berry says, "Hello, Lady C. I have seen an interview on American TV going back quite a few years when this matter first raised its head. Her father told the reporter his daughter is a great actress and a good liar. He was trying to explain how he didn't know what she was enduring. However, to my ear, it seemed to actually expose Virginia Roberts Duffrey as the reprehensible creature that she really is." Shelley Malcolm Berry, I would never be ungracious enough to disagree with you. Her father has gone on record to explain away the fact, obviously, that he used to allow her to consort with these people by saying what a good actress and a good liar she was. Well, if he knew her so well, I mean, let's remember, this is the man who she broke up his marriage for a short while when she was a little girl, accusing somebody, and I'm not going to say who it was for legal reasons, of interference, and it broke up her parents' marriage for a while. She actually went and lived with her aunt at the behest of her parents. Her parents got back together. She was in and out of rehab, in and out of boyfriends' apartments, living with a sex trafficker. I mean, the parents must have been tearing out their hair. I know I would have been. And now her father wishes us to believe that she duped him so entirely because she was a very good liar, and obviously a practiced one, but people who knew her far less well and who knew far less detail of her troubled and a variable past, let's put it that way, let's be polite, that they were supposed to see right through her. Wildly inconsistent. But these are just some of the details that will actually arise if this ever gets to trial. Sue Ann Mishke says, Lady Colin Campbell question. Prince Andrew has decided to fight his court case in a trial. I have read articles stating that Meghan Harry may be subpoenaed into Prince Andrew's trial because of her past connection with Prince Andrew and Epstein. Do you think Meghan and Hapless are worried or concerned about Meghan testifying in Prince Andrew's trial? If Meghan returned to the UK, could she avoid being subpoenaed in the USA? Well, There are several questions, Swan Mishki, in that one question. So I will take them from the bottom up. If she returned to the UK and was living here, I should imagine she would have a perfectly valid right to say that she's awfully sorry she's not going to be giving evidence in the United States. They don't have any jurisdiction over here. That's the first thing. What about, do I think they're worried or concerned about her testifying in Prince Andrew's trial? Well, with due respect, since it is a matter of record that she was never present on any of the occasions that Virginia Giuffre has brought up in her suit, there is no evidence that she could give that would in the slightest bit shed light upon anything. Hearsay is not evidence. A lawyer, big Democratic supporter of Bill Clinton, David Boies, saying to a judge, Kaplan, appointee of Bill Clinton, that a diversion needs to be put in place with an even bigger name than Clinton's, or at least an equally big name globally, that is Prince Andrew. And therefore, the connection needs to be established. Well, what connection? If she wasn't there on the spot when the occasions took place, it's hearsay. It's as simple as that. Roping her in may have been Sunshine Saxe's way of keeping them relevant, but my goodness, hasn't anybody told them that you don't want to be associated with filth when you are supposed to be a decent person? And no, not all publicity is good publicity. A Mail reader says, the Mail reports that Prince Charles and Prince William are piling pressure on Prince Andrew to settle the case with Virginia Giuffre to prevent it overshadowing the Platinum Jubilee. According to the Mail, a royal source said, after the car crash of Newsnight, no one thinks a 7-hour deposition is a good idea. If he were to appear in court, it could be many times worse, and senior royals were deeply shocked when they heard he was demanding a jury trial. The insider told The Sun, the best outcome for everyone is that this is settled as soon as possible. There are deep, deep worries that this will get worse and worse for the family and will overshadow the Platinum Jubilee celebrations. How true is any of this? Well, again, this is several questions. Doubtless Prince Andrew will not make an endearing witness. He's not an endearing person. That doesn't mean that he should be prevented from giving evidence. First of all, let me make it clear, he has asked for a jury trial because it is obvious that Judge Lewis A. Kaplan is discomfortingly partial to the plaintiff and has been discomfortingly partial against the defendant. They feel the only chance he has of anything approximating a fair trial is in front of a jury. People don't have to like someone to know that they're speaking the truth. Prince Andrew is an unlikable character, but that doesn't alter the fact that people who are not biased will very easily be able to come to the conclusion that even though he's a jerk, he didn't do it. And they will equally come to the conclusion that no matter how honeyed Virginia Giuffre's tongue is, and I'm sure it oozes treacle at all times, and no matter how proficient she is at turning on the Meghan, I was going to say the Meghan Markle waterworks, the chairs. This happened 21 years ago and I'm still crying about it. You'd have to be a real Dumbo to not realise that she is completely speaking what is her version of the truth, and there's no approximation to what I, or in my opinion, any rational person would regard as the truth. So, yes, the car crash interview was something, but my understanding is that Prince William and Prince Charles would, of course, like that the whole matter be dispensed with as decently as possible. But that doesn't mean that any of them fails to understand the enormity of what is facing them. As a family and collectively, make no mistake about this, it is not good policy to push that Prince Andrew should settle this case on anything but terms that were adverse to Virginia Giuffre and very positive for him. He has had, by Giuffre and her lawyers' own admission, opportunities from the very outset to settle this, and he has refused on the basis of the fact that he regards this as nothing but a tissue of lies and an extortion attempt. You know, you need to be very careful what you believe when you hear things in newspapers. The Sun is a right-wing publication owned by a Republican, and not, I hasten to add, in American terms, a member of the Republican Party. Long before there was a Republican Party, there was a system of government known as a republic. And we're speaking about the system of government, not the American Republican Party. For those of you who are going to rebel and say, oh, the Republican Party, I'm a Republican, it's got nothing to do with America. Okay? Nothing to do with the Republican Party. They would like in the long term to see the monarchy in Britain dismantled. Not the Mail. The Mail is pro-monarchist. But the Mail has everything to lose in this situation because it is Sharon Churcher of the Mail on Sunday who is the one who went and got Virginia Giuffre dangling £40,000 in front of her nose. Oh, the photograph. Then I think £160,000 a few weeks later to tell her story. Then was writing a book with her. A book which is a tissue of lies about all sorts of men that she was supposed to have slept with. And there is evidently an email history where she is encouraging, if I'm not mistaken, and if it's not her, it's certainly someone else who was encouraging Giuffre, but I think it was her, to name Alan Dershowitz. It's all there in black and white. And this was at a time where Sharon Churcher is on the record as having said that Duffrey had told her that Andrew had not interfered with her in any way, shape or form. Do you get a whiff of what's going on here? The Mail is up to their noses in it. They will have to somehow put distance between themselves and the fact that they and their actions are the one that activated this whole matter by showing Virginia Giuffre how much money she could make. They're the ones who led her into temptation. So when they come up with self-serving, pompous, pious articles, it's just ridiculous. Just ridiculous. You know, they've just written something which is truly appallingly disingenuous. Their royal editor, Richard Kay, who was a friend of Diana's. I know Richard Kay. Oh, he's perfectly personable and very charming. I'll tell you a little something about Richard Kay. When I think it was my Diana book was being published in England, I rang up Richard Kay and asked him, I don't remember what, but I asked him whatever it was. I still have it on tape, incidentally. I'm not stupid. I always tape things like this. And whatever it was, I quoted him as saying whatever it was. Then the book was published, and Richard Kay waded in saying that I had invented the quote. I just phoned him up and I said, if you say that again, I will sue you. I have you on tape. He said, why didn't you tell me you were taping me? I said, what? To give you the opportunity that you have just availed yourself of, or to give me the opportunity of availing myself of what I'm availing myself of now. Anyway, so for quite a while, we were very much on the outs. And gradually over the years, we've said hello. But I have been told by somebody of princely rank that Richard Kay said to him, we would sooner die than write anything nice about Ziadie-Campbell. So that's Richard Kay for you. Richard Pendlebury, if I've met him, I don't know. But they often write things together. They often have double acts on the Mail, so that if you're dissatisfied with the content, the one person can blame the other. It's called dodging the bullet. But anyway, they have written a disgraceful, outrageous article, the headline of which says, in court papers revealed this week, Prince Andrew said, quote unquote, he didn't have enough information to admit or deny the most basic facts about him, Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. Allow us to assist, by Richard Kay and Richard Pendlebury. Then they go through the defense point by point. Now I'll tell you, they know the legal department and the legal team at Associated Newspapers, and so do I. I have been dealing with them for 40 years. They know me very well, and I know one of them extremely well. She is extremely capable. She will have ticked this article and allowed it to be run, knowing fully well that Andrew's defence is exactly what it ought to be, and that the term that didn't have enough information to admit or deny is a legal term that she would have told Andrew to use if she had been his lawyer. It is, in my opinion, absolutely outrageous that the Mail, to cover itself and its role in this stinking situation, and you must agree it stinks to high heaven, that they are now going to be helping to put the boot into Prince Andrew, when they know only too well that his defence is absolutely sound and solid, and the reason why he didn't have enough information to admit or deny things is because anything he admits to or says that if it should turn out to be even slightly inaccurate, or that they could spin it, even if it's accurate, into something unintended, could result in him being charged with perjury. But the Mail doesn't care about that. They don't care about that. All they care about is selling their filthy rag. They are an absolute disgrace. Mandy Tanner says, so Andrew has demanded a trial by jury. Hooray, the light has finally gone on. Maybe he's been listening to you, Lady C. My dear, I can tell you as a fact, whoever has been listening to me, it hasn't been Prince Andrew himself, because I have not been in touch with Prince Andrew himself, and he has not been in touch with me himself either. So let's put it that way. Any other contact I would have with anybody else would be privileged, and therefore I would be very careful to make sure that I did not allude to anybody that I was in contact with or let anybody know. I just make that point for what it's worth. You know, the only reason why Prince Andrew has asked for a trial by jury is he and his legal team are fully aware of the fact that if he doesn't have a trial by jury, Kaplan is going to find him guilty. And Kaplan is going to find against him and find for duffrey. It doesn't take genius to figure it out. And he's got very competent American lawyers. And you know, you have all sorts of people wading in, like Mark Stevens. I mean, I've run across Mark Stevens. He's a very eminent member of the legal profession. He used to own something called Stevens Innocent. I don't even know if he still does. I mean, I haven't seen him for years, but I know who he is and he knows who I am. Let's put it that way. I mean, you know, people like him wade in and make comments about the Jubilee year. Let me tell you something. It is ludicrous of people for the desire to be quoted in a newspaper to come up with stupid things like Prince Andrew should settle as soon as possible so that the Jubilee year won't be tainted. What will taint the Jubilee year and the royal family is if Prince Andrew should be found to have compromised a young girl who was innocent. That would taint the royal family. Jubilee year or none. And I actually don't agree that this is going to overshadow the Jubilee year. I think once the Jubilee celebrations kick in, this is going to just, if not disappear, it's going to be overshadowed by the love that people have for the Queen. So recommending that somebody should settle under any terms when that person feels that they have been stitched up and that they are being extorted is just no. I'm sorry, I'll tell you, if you want, I have been through the defense with a fine-tooth comb. I can go through it for you, point by point. Let me know whether you want to, because it's very well done. If I were Prince Andrew's lawyer and he wanted a trial, I would recommend that he do what they have recommended he is doing. All this hysteria, all this people trying to sell newspapers and coming up with all sorts of stupid, absolutely ridiculous comments, and people being so, like the Mail being so sarcastic. Oh, well, we'll help you to hang yourself. Richard Kay and Richard Pendlebury, your colleague Sharon Churcher is the one who started the whole business that has resulted in this situation. You want to help Andrew to hang himself by telling him stupid advice, and you're going to assist somebody that your newspaper induced with significant sums of money to have post-factual remembrances, and you're going to help? You obviously need to look up the meaning of the word help in the dictionary. And I think on that note, I will say, if you would like me to go through the whole defense and lead you through it point by point as to why the lawyers are doing what they're doing, I will be delighted to do it. Put the request in the comment section. And on that note, I will say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and remember, keep the questions coming in. God bless and goodbye.